Hey, you remember that episode of South Park where Cartman tries to start a deepfake streaming service called Queepy? Or the one where an arcade opens up in town and it kind of turns into this commentary on gaming culture? Given the insane amount of South Park episodes, it wouldn't be surprising if you actually didn't remember them, except they don't actually exist. But they also kind of do. They just weren't written by Trey Parker and Matt Stone, nor did anyone on the production team actually animate them. A new AI generator called AI Showrunner, made by The Simulation, claims to be able to create full episodes of South Park based simply off of a prompt. I did have some doubts about the legitimacy of all of this, so I read through the paper and I did some research as to who was behind the curtain, and there's a lot to unpack here. So let's start by taking a look at a clip from an AI-generated South Park episode.
Exactly, Stan! And that's where my business idea comes in. I'm glad you asked, Kenny. It's called Queepy, a deepfake streaming service.
Wait, what? Deepfake?
Cartman, that's illegal and unethical. No, it's genius. We take existing shows and movies and just replace the actors with deepfake versions of other famous people. Like imagine Game of Thrones, but with Danny DeVito as Daenerys.
By the way, there are actually a couple of these episodes and you can watch them. All of them are linked below. So the claim there is that that was wholly generated by AI, and it definitely has some AI hallmarks to it. Like the voices aren't quite right, and there is a bit of a natural latency between the voices that a human editor would cut out. So this whole thing ended up kicking off with a tweet thread from The Simulation at Fable Simulation on Twitter. It included a demo walkthrough of the platform and an actual research paper as well. The whole UI aspect of it is actually pretty brilliant. You can choose who your main character is, what cast members you want in there, and ultimately prompt what story you want to see. It goes on to claim that these icons will sort of move around the town, acting almost like NPCs. In a tweet, they said, ultimately, we think that single agent chatbots will fail because they have no lives and can't empathize. Does anyone want endless small talk with a brain in a jar? The AIs should have their own lives, and for that we need societies of AIs. Less her and more Free Guy. Shout out to Free Guy, by the way. If you haven't caught that movie, it's actually a ton of fun and really charming. I do highly recommend it. They added in this additional UI where apparently you can see the scenes broken down, and I presume you could go through and edit the script as well. Once you have your prompt done, you hit generate, and within moments you have a fully baked South Park episode. The paper claims that they have trained ChatGPT on various transcripts of South Park episodes, and thus the language model knows the personalities of all the various characters. The paper also states that when ChatGPT begins to hallucinate, as it often does, that you should look at that as unexpectedness and a happy accident in creativity. I actually don't disagree with that at all. I've actually ended up going down some pretty interesting creative roads when ChatGPT starts to lie to me. On the video side, the paper claims that they are using two separate Stable Diffusion Dream Booth models, one for the background and one for the main characters. I'll say that's actually a pretty interesting idea, although the paper makes no mention of how they're generating, 15 to 24 frames per second and then actually combining those two layers together. The idea is that the first model is generating the single characters against a keyable background, while the other model is handling the background. There's no mention in the paper of how the voices are being generated. Now, through this whole thing, they make a very big deal that this is only for research purposes, that they have no connection to South Park, and they do not plan on releasing this as some sort of South Park story generator. But they do say that they do have plans for several original IPs coming up over the next few years. A space exploration simulation called The Prize, a satire of Silicon Valley called Exit Valley, and a playful detective simulation about Charlie Jupiter. So let's take a look behind the curtain and see exactly what's going on with Fable Studio. I'll admit this is where things get a little bit on the fishy side. For example, the technology behind this South Park animation stuff is called Show One. Meanwhile, their actual product is called AI Storyteller. Their Twitter handle is The Simulation. Their company is Fable Studio. It's all kind of a big branding mess. So according to a number of news articles on VentureBeat and Yahoo, Fable's CEO is Edward Sachi, who is a real person. Fable itself is an actual company. Sachi was actually a founding member of the Oculus team. He also won an Emmy for his work adapting Neil Gaiman's The Wolves in the Walls into sort of a VR interactive environment. It's funny, back in 2018 when Wolves was released, Sachi said, 4 years ago, our vision of where narrative VR might go was pretty much Wolves, to be honest. Now that we're actually close to that vision, I don't think that's the future. Instead, he envisioned a cross-platform interactive character that's viewable through augmented reality glasses. So he has been in the space for a while. So in the VentureBeat article, where it says that he has been a vocal advocate for the technology, stating that it can generate not just the dialogue, but also animate, voice, and edit episodes. I mean, it does come with some weight. And I'll say using South Park as an example is a kind of a brilliant move because the animation is so basic. In the VentureBeat article, Sachi said, the crude visual style of South Park lends itself to the current technological abilities of these systems, with more sophisticated animation and visual fidelity being possible in the future. Now, things do start to fall apart a bit when you visit the website, which is actually a pretty nice website. They actually do have a beta invitation as well. I signed up for it because why not? But when you start to dig in a little bit, for example, the only research paper they have on the site is referencing the South Park episode, and particularly when you go to the teams section and you are greeted with what are clearly AI-generated characters. For example, Dale Gracie, who was the principal at Disney Imagineering, you figure would come up in a Google search, but does not. Oh, and Dr. Zola here also does not exist, though that might be a clever play on the Marvel supervillain. They also do have a company phone number, which we're going to call, and...
The Google subscriber you have called is not available. Please leave a message after the tone.
So that's a little suspicious, right? And finally, the company address does not actually exist. Now, there is a bit of a rabbit hole here because, as I mentioned earlier, Fable is a real company. And there are many that have pointed to the fact that the fake website is actually part of the company culture. And if you visit the Fable Vimeo, you'll actually find previous projects like a AI-generated Friends episode. So the technology that they're using actually does exist. And in fact, the simulation is indeed a real project, although it appears to be more about creating a virtual world populated with virtual AI people. To me, it's unclear whether Trey Parker and Matt Stone are actually involved in this. On the one hand, I can see this being right up their alley, particularly as it works as such a meta commentary given the current issues with AI and the writers and actors strikes. Meanwhile, in the job section of the simulation website, it does appear as if there are actual legitimate jobs that they are hiring for. So I don't know, if you're an AI research scientist, maybe you can apply and then let me know how much of a hoax this actually is. So let me know what you guys think. Again, all of the episodes to the simulated South Parks are down below, as well as a link to the research paper if you would like to read it. I thank you for watching. My name is Tim.